The last thing my father said to me was, "Don't come back." He said it without shouting. That was the worst part. There was no anger in his voice, just a kind of tired certainty, like he had already decided this a long time ago, and was only saying it out loud. He handed me a bag, my own bag, already packed, and closed the door before I could say a single word. I stood on the porch for a long time. It was a Thursday night in October. The air smelled like wet leaves, and something burning somewhere far away. I had $32 in my pocket, a half-charged phone, and 3 pairs of socks. The bag had some clothes, a charger, and a photo of my mom that I had kept hidden under my mattress for 3 years because my dad hated looking at her face. I sat on the bottom step of his porch and stared at the empty road. My name is Eli Park. I was 18 years old that night, and I had just been removed from my own life like a splinter. Someone finally got tired of leaving in. Here is the thing about being kicked out. Nobody tells you what to do after. You don't have a plan because you never thought it would actually happen, even when you felt it coming. So, you just sit there, and the cold comes, slowly, and you realize you have nowhere to go. I called my friend Marcus first. His mom answered and said he wasn't home. I knew she was lying because I could hear a TV in the background, and Marcus always watched the game on Thursdays. I called my cousin Denny, straight to voicemail. I sat there calling people and getting silence back, and I started to understand something that I had maybe always known, but never wanted to admit, that I didn't really have people, not the kind who show up. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text from Joseph Kang. Joseph and I had been in the same school since sophomore year. We weren't exactly friends. We were more like two people who existed in overlapping spaces. Same lunch period, same AP English class, same bus stop for 6 months before he got a car. We talked sometimes. He was funny in a dry, quiet way. He noticed things other people missed. I liked him, I think, in a way I didn't fully understand yet. His text said, "Hey, I heard what happened. My parents are out of town. You can stay here if you need." I stared at that message for a full 3 minutes. How did he even know? I had been sitting on that porch for less than an hour. The only person I had told was Marcus, and Marcus wasn't picking up my calls. I typed back, "How do you know?" He replied. Marcus texted me. He felt bad, but his mom said no. "Are you okay?" I almost laughed. I almost cried. I typed, "Not really." He sent his address. I picked up my bag and started walking. Joseph's house was 20 minutes away on foot. It was in one of those neighborhoods where every house looked the same. Red brick, 2 floors, a tree in the front yard. His had a blue mailbox. I noticed that. I don't know why. Maybe because I was paying very close attention to small things, just to keep from falling apart. He opened the door before I knocked. He was wearing a gray hoodie and sweatpants, and his hair was a mess, like he had been lying down. He looked at me for 1 second, looked at my bag, and then stepped aside to let me in. "You eaten?" he said. "No." "Okay." That was it. That was the whole conversation. He went to the kitchen, and I stood in his living room and looked around at his life. The books on the shelf, the guitar in the corner, the framed photo of a younger Joseph and a woman who must have been his mother, both of them laughing at something off camera. He came back with instant noodles and a glass of water. I sat on his couch and ate and didn't say anything. He sat on the floor with his back against the couch and scrolled his phone, and also didn't say anything, and somehow that was the most comfortable I had felt, all night. Maybe all year. "You can take my room," he said when I finished eating. "I'll sleep on the couch." "I'll take the couch," I said. "You're the guest. You're doing me a favor." He looked at me for a moment. Then he said, "Fine, we'll figure it out." I pulled a blanket over myself and closed my eyes. Through the window, I could hear the wind moving through the trees outside. It sounded almost kind, the way wind sometimes does when everything else is quiet. I told myself it was just one night. I was wrong about that. I woke up to the smell of eggs. For exactly 3 seconds, I forgot where I was. I thought I was home. I thought I would hear my dad moving around in the kitchen, making the strong black coffee he drank every morning. The one that smelled like burnt wood. I thought I would get up, and we would not speak to each other, and that would be fine, because at least I would have a house. Then I remembered. I sat up on Joseph's couch and looked at the ceiling and breathed. The ceiling had a small crack near the light fixture, shaped a little like a river. I stared at it and thought, okay, this is where you are now. This is what is real. Joseph appeared from the kitchen doorway holding 2 plates. "Scrambled or fried?" he called, then looked at me. "Oh, you're up. I made both. Come eat." I dragged myself to the kitchen table. He had made eggs, toast, and orange juice that smelled like it was actually fresh squeezed. There was a folded paper towel next to each plate as a makeshift napkin. I don't know why that detail hit me so hard. It was such a small thing, but no one had set a place for me at a table in a long time. You didn't have to do this, I said. I was cooking anyway, he said. He sat across from me and picked up his fork and started eating like it was a normal morning and I was not a stranger sitting in his kitchen with yesterday's clothes and no plan for my life. We ate in silence for a while. So, he said finally, what happened? If you want to talk. I thought about it. I didn't really want to talk, but something about the way he asked, no pressure, no drama, just simple and direct, made it feel safe. My dad found out I'm gay, I said. Joseph nodded slowly. He didn't say anything right away, which I appreciated. People usually say something immediately, and it's never the right thing. How? He asked. He read my journal. I picked at my toast. I know. I should have hidden it better. I didn't think he would. He's not someone who goes through your things. Or I thought he wasn't. And he just kicked you out? He said he needed time. But the bag was already packed. I looked up at him. You don't pack a bag for someone you want to come back. Joseph was quiet again. He looked at his plate. Then he said, no, you don't. Something in his voice made me curious, but I didn't ask. We finished eating. He washed the dishes even though I offered to do it. He said I was a guest, and guests didn't wash dishes. And I said I wasn't sure I was a guest so much as a squatter, and he almost smiled at that. Not a full smile, but the corner of his mouth went up a little, and I decided to count it. I stayed on his couch that night too, and the next night. By the fourth day, we had settled into a routine without talking about it. I woke up first. He made breakfast. I cleaned the kitchen after. We both did our own separate things during the day. I had online coursework to finish. He had some part-time design job he did from his laptop. We ate dinner together at the kitchen table and watched something on his laptop after. On the fifth day, I found him sitting on the floor of his room with papers spread out around him, looking stressed. What's wrong? I said from the doorway. Line, he said, not looking up. Client wants revisions by tonight, and I can't figure out what they mean by make it feel warmer. What does that even mean? I walked in and looked at his laptop screen. It was a logo design, clean, modern, a bit cold. I looked at it for a moment. The font, I said. It's too sharp, round the corners a little, and the blue, make it a tiny bit greener, warmer tones. He looked at me. You know design? I know it feels cold, I said. He turned back to his laptop. A few minutes later, oh, yeah, that's it. He leaned back and looked at the screen. That's actually exactly it. He turned to look at me again, and this time it was a real look, not a passing glance, like he was seeing me properly for the first time. Thanks, he said. Anytime. I went back to Gooch, but I kept thinking about that look he gave me, and something warm and confusing started to settle into my chest. I told myself it was gratitude. I was wrong about that too. The call came on day 6. My phone rang while I was in the bathroom, so I missed it. I came out and and my whole body went cold. Dad, I stood there for a long time, looking at that name. Joseph appeared from the kitchen. He saw my face. What happened? I held up my phone so he could see the name. He looked at it, then at me. Are you going to call back? I don't know, I said. He didn't push. He just went back to the kitchen. I sat down on the couch and stared at my phone and tried to figure out what I was feeling. It was not happiness. It was not relief. It was something more complicated than that. Something that lived right between hoping and being afraid to hope. I put the phone face down and decided not to call back. Not yet. But I kept thinking about that packed bag, about how fast it had all happened, about whether there was a version of my father I had never really known. And outside, it had started to rain. On the 8th day, I heard Joseph playing guitar. It was late, almost midnight. I had been lying on the couch half asleep when the sound started, slow, soft, like he didn't know or didn't care if anyone could hear. It was not a song I recognized. It felt like something he was making up as he went, following feeling instead of structure. I lay still and listened. It was beautiful, in the kind of way that makes you feel a little sad, even when you don't know why. Like looking at a photograph of a place you've never been, but somehow feel like you've lost. I got up quietly and stood near his door, which was half open. He was sitting on the edge of his bed, guitar in his lap, eyes closed. The lamp beside him was the only light in the room, and it was warm and low, and for a second I just stood there and looked at him. He opened his eyes and saw me. Neither of us moved. Sorry, I said. I didn't mean to, I just heard. It's okay, he said. He didn't seem embarrassed, just a little surprised. Did it wake you? I wasn't really asleep. He nodded. He looked down at the guitar, then back at me. Do you want to come in? I did. I sat on the floor near his bed, back against the wall, knees pulled up. He started playing again, softer now, but not stopping. I didn't say anything. I just listened. After a while he said, without looking up, I used to play for my mom. She'd sit outside my door and listen. She never came in either. She said she didn't want to interrupt, but I think she just liked the in-between, the not quite, there. Where is she now? I asked. She moved to Busan 2 years ago, after the divorce. He plucked a single string, let it ring. My dad got the house. I was 17. They asked who I wanted to live with, and I said neither. And they were both so tired of fighting that they just let me stay here alone. I stared at him. You've been living here alone since you were 17? My dad checks in, pays the bills, shows up for dinner once a month. He shrugged, but it was not a relaxed shrug. It was the kind that covers something heavier. It's fine. That doesn't sound fine. He looked at me then, and I saw something in his face that I hadn't expected. Not sadness, exactly, but the shape of loneliness that had been lived in for so long. I stopped feeling like something wrong and started feeling like just the way things were. No, he said, it's not fine, but I got used to it. We stayed like that for a while, him playing, me listening. Then he said, very quietly, I'm glad you're here, Eli. My heart did something I was not prepared for. Me too, I said. He looked back down at the guitar, and I looked at the floor. And neither of us said anything else. But the room felt completely different after that, like something had shifted, just slightly, like a door someone left open by accident that neither person wanted to close. The next morning, I found a note on the kitchen table. Had to run an errand. Back by noon. There's cereal or leftover rice. Your call. Don't break anything. I laughed at that. He had also drawn a small, terrible stick figure at the bottom of the note. Standing next to what I assumed was a bowl of cereal. It was so awful looking that I laughed again. I took a photo of the note and didn't ask myself why. He came back at noon exactly, carrying 2 bags of groceries. I was going to cook tonight, he said, dropping the bags on the counter. Is there anything you don't eat? I eat everything. Good. Me too. He started pulling things out of the bags. Vegetables, garlic, some kind of fish, soy sauce, sesame oil. He moved around the kitchen like he actually knew what he was doing. I watched from the doorway. Who taught you to cook? I asked. My mom. Before she left, he didn't pause. He said it lightly, like it was a simple fact, but I heard the thing underneath it. She said it was important to know how to feed yourself. She said nobody should have to depend on someone else just to eat. I thought about my own mother, who I had lost differently. She hadn't left. She had gotten sick, fast, and then suddenly, when I was 12. My dad had never really come back from it, and I had never really understood until recently that I wasn't the only one who was missing her all this time. My mom died when I was 12, I said. Joseph turned from the counter. He looked at me. I'm sorry, he said, and he meant it. I could tell the difference between people who say it and people who mean it. It was a long time ago, I said. It doesn't matter how long ago, he said. You still miss them. I nodded. I didn't trust my voice. He turned back to the cooking. I sat down at the kitchen table. The smell of garlic and sesame oil filled the whole kitchen, warm and deep, and something about it made me feel more settled than I had in days. Maybe weeks. Maybe longer than that. I didn't look for the word for what I was feeling, but it felt a lot like home. Dinner that night was the best meal I had eaten in months. We sat across from each other at the small kitchen table, with the overhead light on, and the window dark behind us, and we ate and talked about small things. A show he was watching, a class I was struggling with, whether the convenience store 2 blocks away had the best ramyeon, or just the cheapest. It felt easy, natural, like we had been doing this for years. I helped clear the table. He washed, I dried. We stood at the sink side by side, and the kitchen felt very small, and I was very aware of how close we were. His shoulder was almost touching mine. I kept my eyes on the dishes and tried not to think about it. I failed. After, we went to the living room and put on something to watch. He sat on one end of the couch, I sat on the other, a cushion of empty space between us. About 20 minutes in, he shifted, lying sideways with his legs stretched toward me, not touching, just in that direction. I watched the screen and did not watch him. My phone buzzed. I looked down expecting a notification from some app, but it was a text. From my dad. I've been thinking, come home, Eli. We can talk. I stared at it. Read it 4 times, come home. 2 words. So simple. So impossible. What did home mean now? Was it the house I had grown up in with a man who looked at me differently the moment he found out the truth? Was it the couch I had been sleeping on for over a week in someone else's life? I put my phone face down on the cushion. You okay? Joseph said. He was watching me, not the screen. My dad texted. He sat up slowly. What did he say? I picked up the phone and handed it to him. He read it. His face didn't change much, but I saw his jaw move a little, like he was choosing his words carefully. What are you thinking? He asked, handing it back. I don't know. I leaned my head back against the couch. Part of me wants to go. He's still my dad. And I keep thinking, maybe he's trying, maybe it's real. And the other part? I closed my eyes. The other part remembers the bag, already packed, like he had been planning it. Joseph was quiet for a moment. Then, you don't have to decide tonight. I know. And whatever you decide, you can still come back here. I opened my eyes and looked at him. He was looking at me steadily. Not with pity. Not with anything complicated. Just with something clear and honest that I didn't quite have a word for yet. Why are you doing this? I asked. The question came out more serious than I intended. You barely know me. You didn't have to take me in. You didn't have to cook for me or let me sleep here or any of this. Why? He looked at me for a long moment. Then he looked away. I'll tell you, he said. Just not tonight. My heart did the thing again. That strange, flipping, warm thing. Okay, I said. We turned the show back on. His legs were still stretched toward my side of the couch. At some point during the next episode, without either of us saying anything, the distance between us shrank. His feet were near my leg. My shoulder was near his knee. Not touching, but close. When I finally went to sleep that night, I lay on the couch in the dark and thought about that text from my dad. I thought about home. I thought about packed bags and closed doors and how the sound of the guitar at midnight had felt like something opening instead of closing. I thought about Joseph's voice when he said, I'll tell you, just not tonight, and I could not sleep for a very long time. The next day, Joseph was different, not in a bad way, not cold or distant, just careful, like he was aware of something and trying to decide what to do with it. He made breakfast, but didn't sit across from me. He stood at the counter and ate his toast while looking at his phone. He said good morning, and it was warm but brief. He went to his room after, and I could hear his music playing softly through the door. I cleaned the kinch and tried not to overthink it. Mid-morning, I got another text from my dad. This one said, I'm not asking you to forget, I'm asking for a chance. I sat with that for a while. Then I knocked on Joseph's door. Come in, he said. He was at his desk, laptop open, but he wasn't looking at it. He turned when I came in. I held up my phone. I'm going to meet him. Just for coffee or something. Not to go back. Just to talk. Joseph nodded. Okay, I think I need to hear what he has to say. Yeah. He held my eyes. That makes sense. Are you going to tell me to be careful? I said, half joking, half not. He thought about it. No, he said. You already know to be careful. You don't need me to say it. He paused. I'll leave the door unlocked. I stared at him. So you can come back, he said, whenever you're done. Something about those words hit me so hard I had to look away. I leave the door unlocked. Such a simple thing, such an enormous thing. Thank you, I said, and I meant it for more than just the door. My dad looked smaller than I remembered. I know that sounds strange. He was the same height, the same wide shoulders, the same way of sitting with his hands wrapped round a cup, like he was trying to warm himself up from the inside. But something about him looked reduced, tired, like a fire that had been burning for a long time and was finally running low. I sat down across from him in the cafe he had suggested, a small, neutral place in the middle of the city, the kind where nobody knows each other. He looked at me. I looked at him. You look thin, he said. I'm fine. Are you eating? I almost said, yes. Someone is making me breakfast every morning, and it's the best I've eaten in weeks, tea, but I just said, yes. He nodded. He looked down at his coffee. The silence was thick but not angry. It felt more like something held very carefully, like neither of us wanted to be the one who dropped it. I handled it wrong, he said finally. I waited, I panicked. He rubbed the side of his face. I found the journal and I didn't know what to do with it, so I did the worst thing I could have done. He looked up at me. I packed your bag and I told you to go, and I have not slept well since. Why did you pack the bag? I asked. My voice was steady. I had practiced being steady. If you panicked, why was there a bag already packed? He was quiet. Then, because I had found the journal 3 days before, I thought about what to do, and the bag was one of the things I thought about. I'm not proud of that. I looked at the table. You had 3 days, I said, and you chose the bag. Yes. And now you want me to come back. Yes. Because you feel bad. Because you're my son. His voice cracked on the last word, just a little. And I let you down. And I know I can't. I know it's not simple. I know I hurt you. I'm not asking you to pretend that didn't happen. He leaned forward. I'm asking if you're willing to try. I looked at my father's face. I looked at the lines around his eyes, deeper than I remembered. I thought about my mom, who had loved him and loved me, and left both of us too soon. I thought about how we had both been walking through her absence for years, separately, never reaching for each other. I need time, I said. He nodded immediately. Okay, I'm not ready to come back yet. Okay, but I don't want to lose you either. The words cost me something. I just need you to understand that who I am is not something that's going to change. And if you can't be okay with that eventually, then we can't do this. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, I know that. I'm working on it, Eli. I know that's not enough right now. But I'm trying. I looked at him. Okay, I said. We didn't hug. We weren't there yet. But we sat in that cafe for another hour and talked about small things. The neighborhood, his job, a news story he had seen that he thought was strange. And it felt fragile, like something made of paper, but it also felt real. When I stood to go, he said, "Where are you staying?" "With a friend," I said. "Good friend?" I thought about Joseph, the breakfast, the guitar at midnight, the unlocked door. "Yeah," I said. A good friend. I walked back to Joseph's house. He was sitting on the front step when I arrived, like he had been waiting. He had 2 drinks from the convenience store. One for him, one for me, even though I hadn't told him when I'd be back. "How'd it go?" he said, handing me the drink. I sat down beside him on the step. Our shoulders touched. I told him everything. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then, "How do you feel?" "Like I have a very long road ahead," I said. "You don't have to walk it all today." I turned to look at him. He was looking ahead at the street, calm and steady, the way he always was. "Joseph," I said, "you said you'd tell me." He looked at me. "Why you took me in," I said. "You said not that night, so tell me now." He held my gaze for a moment, then he looked back at the street. "Because," he said, slowly, "I've been watching you for 2 years. And every time I walked past you in the hallway or sat near you in English class, I thought, I should say something more. I should talk to him properly, and I never did." He paused. "And then Marcus texted me and said what happened, and I thought, if I don't do something now, I'm going to spend 2 more years regretting it." My heart was very loud. "So you took me in," I said carefully, "because you didn't want to regret it." "Because," he corrected quietly, "I like you, Eli. I've liked you for a while. And I thought, maybe if you were here, I'd finally figure out how to say that." The street was very quiet. The wind moved through the trees. "You just said it," I said. He turned to look at me, and he almost smiled. We didn't say anything for the rest of that evening. But things were different. Not awkward different. Not uncomfortable different. More like the air had changed. Lighter, or maybe just clearer. The way it gets after rain, when everything is washed and you can smell things you couldn't smell before. We made dinner together. He cut the vegetables, I stirred the broth. Our hands passed things back and forth, and every time our fingers came close, neither of us flinched. We ate at the table. We watched something on the laptop. We sat close on the couch, closer than before, and didn't pretend we didn't notice. When I said goodnight, he said goodnight, and neither of us moved for a second. Then I went to the couch. But I lay there in the dark, smiling at the ceiling, and the crack near the light fixture looked like a river again. And this time it seemed like it was going somewhere good. 3 days later, Marcus showed up. He rang the doorbell on a Saturday afternoon while Joseph was in the shower. I answered, and there he was, tall, guilty-looking, holding a bag of chips like a peace offering. "Hey," he said. "Hey," I said. "I'm sorry I didn't call back," he said. "My mom, I know. It's not an excuse. I should have. It's okay, Marcus." He looked surprised, like he was expecting a fight. "I mean it," I said. "Come in." He came in. He sat at the kitchen table and looked around the house with obvious curiosity. "So you're staying with Kang?" "Joseph, yeah." "Huh." He looked at me with the expressions of someone putting something together. "And how's that going?" "Fine," I said. "Just fine?" Joseph appeared from the hallway, hair wet, wearing a plain shirt and jeans. He saw Marcus. "Oh, hey. Hey, man," Marcus said. He looked between us once. Then he opened his chips and offered them to the room in general, and that was apparently enough. The 3 of us sat at the table and talked for 2 hours. It was good, easy, normal. The kind of afternoon that doesn't mean anything huge but feels like an anchor, like proof that life is still moving forward in an ordinary way. When Marcus left, he pulled me aside at the door. Ellie, serious question. What? He looked at Joseph, who was still at the table, then back at me. Do you like him? I said nothing. Marcus nodded slowly, like I had confirmed everything. Okay, just making sure you know. He clapped me on the shoulder. He's one of the good ones. He left. I closed the door and stood in the hallway for a moment. Then I went back to the kitchen. Joseph was looking at me. What did he say? He asked. Nothing, I said. He raised an eyebrow. He said you're one of the good ones, I said. Joseph looked at the table. Something passed across his face, soft and private and quick. Marcus has terrible taste in music, he said. But otherwise, okay. I laughed, and he smiled. A real one this time, full and easy. And I realized I had not seen him smile like that before. It was a good smile, warm, like the house felt when he was cooking, and the smell filled every room. I sat back down at the table. Joseph, I said. Yeah, I like you too, I said, in case that wasn't clear. He looked at me. It was a little clear, he said. Good. We looked at each other. Then he said, so what do we do about it? I don't know, I said honestly. I'm not exactly in a suitable point of my life. That's fair. And I don't want to mess up what's already here. This. I gestured vaguely between us, at the kitchen, at the house. Whatever this is, I don't want to mess it up either, he said. But I also don't want to just not try because we're scared. So we try, I said. We try, he agreed. Slowly, I said. Slowly, he said, and he reached across the table and covered my hand with his. Not dramatically. Not with any announcement. Just set his hand over mine, warm and light, and left it there. I turned my hand over so my palm was up, and his fingers settled between mine. We sat like that for a while. Outside, the sun was going down. The kitchen got slowly warmer colored, and neither of us moved, and neither of us needed to. 3 weeks later, someone posted a photo online. I didn't see it first. Joseph did. He came out of his room with a strange expressions on his face, holding his phone. Ellie, come here. I came. He handed me the phone. It was a photo someone had taken from outside the cafe where I had met my dad. Through the window, you could see me and my dad sitting across from each other. Whoever took it had written a caption above it, something vicious about me, about being a disgrace, about my dad doing the right thing by cutting off his child. My hands went cold. Who posted this? I said. Someone from school, Mingyu. Joseph's voice was flat. He's in my grade. I don't know how he must have been at the cafe. I read the caption again, then stopped reading it. It had been shared 14 times already. Ellie. Joseph's hand was on my arm. Hey, look at me. I looked at him. He's wrong, he said, simply, clearly. Everything he wrote is wrong. I know that, I said. My voice came out harder than I meant. It doesn't matter if it's wrong. People read it. Not people who matter to you. You don't know that. I stepped back. I needed air. I needed space. I felt suddenly, intensely like the walls were too close. I need a minute. I went to the bathroom and sat on the edge of the tub and breathed. I counted the tiles on the floor. I told myself it was just words. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself a lot of things that were partly true and partly something I was saying to keep from coming apart. After a while, there was a knock. Ellie, I'm okay, I said. I know you are, Joseph said. I just wanted to tell you, I replied to it. I opened the door. He was leaning against the wall opposite. He looked calm, but his jaw was tight. What did you say? I asked. I said that the person in that photo is someone I am proud to know, and that posting private moments of strangers is its own kind of disgrace. He paused. And then I said some other things that were maybe less polite. I stared at him. You didn't have to do that, I said. I know. It might cause you problems. I know that too. Joseph, Ely, he met my eyes. Some things are worth the problem. I didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. I just looked at him. This boy who had opened his door for me when I had nowhere to go, who made eggs in the morning and played guitar at midnight, who held my hand at the kitchen table and replied to a stranger online so I didn't have to. This boy who kept doing things he didn't have to do. Why? I said. Why do you keep doing this? He looked at me like the answer was obvious, like I was asking why the sky was above us. Because you matter, he said. Very simply, very directly, and something cracked open in my chest. Not in a bad way. In the way things crack open when too much light gets through at once. The post got taken down 2 days later. Mingyu made a quiet, cowardly private apology that neither of us accepted with much warmth. But that wasn't the twist. The twist was what my dad sent me the morning after Joseph had replied to the post. A screenshot of Joseph's reply. And below it, my dad had written, "Who is this person?" I showed it to Joseph. He read it, raised an eyebrow. "What are you going to tell him?" he asked. I took the phone back. I thought for a long moment. Then I typed, "His name is Joseph. He's the reason I'm okay." My dad read it. 3 dots appeared, disappeared. Appeared again. Then I would like to meet him. If he's willing, and if you are. I looked up at Joseph. "My dad wants to meet you," I said. Joseph blinked. Just once. Then, "Okay, that's it, just okay? Should I be more dramatic about it? Maybe a little." He almost smiled. "Okay," he said again. And then, with great deliberate seriousness, "Oh no, how terrifying." I laughed. Really laughed, for the first time in what felt like a very long time. He was grinning now too, that good warm grin, and I thought, this is what I want to come home to. This exact thing, right here. The meeting with my dad happened on a Sunday. We went together, Joseph and I, to the same cafe as before. My dad was already there when we arrived. He was sitting straight, hands around his coffee cup, watching the door. When we walked in, he looked at Joseph first, then at me, and something moved across his face that I couldn't quite read. We sat down. Nobody said anything for a moment. Then my dad said to Joseph, "You're the one who replied to that post." Joseph held his gaze. "Yes." "Why?" Joseph thought about it. He wasn't a person who just said things quickly, just to fill silence. "Because it was wrong, and because Eli didn't deserve it." He paused. "And because if I let things that are wrong just happen when I could do something, that's not who I want to be." My dad looked at him for a long moment. Then he looked at me. "He's like your mother," he said quietly. I blinked. "What?" "She used to say things like that. If I can do something, then I have to." He looked down at his cup. "She would have liked him." My throat tightened. "Yeah," I said. "She would have." We talked for 2 hours. My dad asked Joseph careful questions. About his family, his plans, how long he had known me. Joseph answered honestly, without performing or shrinking. He talked about his parents' divorce. With the same quiet calm, he talked about everything. He talked about the design work. He talked about when Marcus had texted him, and he had made the decision to reach out to me. "You didn't know him that well," my dad said. "Why take the risk?" Joseph looked at me briefly. Then, "Some people you just know are worth taking a risk for." My dad was quiet. Then he turned to me. "I'm not there yet," he said. "I want you to know I'm not saying I've figured it all out. I'm still working through things. Old things, my own failures." He looked at his hands. "But I see you, and I don't want to keep choosing the wrong thing." He looked up. "I love you, Eli. You are my son, and I am sorry it took me this long to say it this way." My eyes burned. I did not cry, but it was close. "Okay," I said. My voice was rough. "Okay, Dad." He nodded. He looked at Joseph one more time. "Take care of him." Joseph said, "He takes care of himself, but I'll be there anyway." My dad almost smiled at that. We walked home afterward in the pale afternoon light. Joseph and I, down the same streets I had walked with my bag that first night. The air was cold but clear, the kind of cold that makes everything look sharp and real. "So," Joseph said. "So," I said. "How are you feeling?" I thought about it honestly. "Like something is starting," I said. "Not like something is ending. Like, things are just beginning to sort themselves out." He nodded. We walked in silence for a while. Then he said, "You know you can stay as long as you want." "I know. And when you're ready to go back, that's okay too." "I know that too." I looked at him sideways. "Are you trying to kick me out?" "No," he said, very firmly. "Absolutely not." Then, I got used to having someone eat my cooking. Very romantic reason to keep someone around. "I have many romantic reasons," he said lightly. "The cooking is just the most practical." I laughed. He smiled. We turned down his street, the one with the red brick houses and the blue mailbox that I had noticed on the very first night. The tree in the front yard had dropped most of its leaves. The house looked small and warm, light already on in the kitchen. Because he had left it on when we went out. A habit, he'd said. Because he didn't like coming home too dark. We went inside. He put the kettle on. I set my jacket on the back of the chair that had become mine. The guitar was in the corner. The crack in the ceiling above the couch was shaped like a river. His terrible stick figure note was still on the fridge because I had taped it back up there one afternoon, and he hadn't said anything about it. "Tea?" he said from the kitchen. "Yeah," I said, and I sat down at the table and felt the warmth of the house settle around me. Not like a place I was visiting, but like a place I was from. Here is what I know now. Love does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it arrives quietly, through a text in the dark, a plate of eggs, a door left unlocked. Sometimes the person who ends up mattering most is someone you passed in the hallway 100 times without knowing what they would one day mean. My dad kicked me out. That was real, and it hurt, and it was not okay. but Joseph took me in. That was also real. And when he finally showed his true colors, they were steady and warm and worth staying for. I don't know exactly what comes next. I know my dad and I have a long road still. I know Joseph and I are new and fragile and learning. I know nothing is simple, but I'm here. I'm okay. And somewhere in this small house, with the blue mailbox, and the guitar in the corner, and the river-shaped crack in the ceiling, I think I finally found what it feels like to be loved. Not rescued, not saved, just loved, quietly, fully, like I was always worth it. Eli Park.